In a lot of beginner conversations about cybersecurity programs, the focus stays on tools and policies. But the quiet truth is that most security success or failure comes from how the program is built inside the organization. A security program is not just a set of controls, because controls need people to approve them, implement them, follow them, and maintain them. That means security has to fit the culture of the organization. It has to have clear reporting lines so work gets prioritized and supported, and it has to have decision rights so everyone knows who can decide what and when. If those pieces are missing, even smart security ideas can stall, get watered down, or turn into arguments that never end. If those pieces are strong, a program can make steady progress even when the organization is busy, stressed, or changing. In this episode, the aim is to help you understand how culture, reporting lines, and decision rights shape the structure of a security program, and why structure is one of the most practical security controls you can build. Culture is the first concept to understand because it shapes how people behave when nobody is watching, and that is exactly the condition that security relies on. Culture includes shared beliefs about risk, habits around communication, the pace of work, and the level of trust between teams. In some organizations, people value speed above all else, and security is expected to keep up without slowing anything down. In others, people value stability, and any change requires careful planning and strong evidence before it is accepted. Some cultures are very collaborative, where decisions happen through discussion and consensus, while other cultures are more top-down, where direction is given and compliance is expected. None of these cultural patterns is automatically good or bad, but they each require a different security structure to be effective. When a security program fights the culture instead of working with it, the program often becomes isolated, viewed as a blocker, and eventually ignored or bypassed. To design around culture, you first need to recognize that culture affects how security messages are received and how conflicts are resolved. In a culture that values autonomy, security may need to offer clear guardrails and options rather than rigid rules, because people respond better to choices and reasoning. In a culture that values standardization, security can often succeed by creating consistent patterns and enforcing them widely, because people already expect uniformity. In a culture that values relationships, security decisions may depend on trust and informal influence, which means the program structure should include frequent engagement with other teams. In a culture that values metrics, security can gain traction by showing measurable outcomes and tying them to business results. A beginner mistake is to assume you can drop the same security program design into any environment and it will work the same way. A better approach is to treat culture like the terrain you are navigating, because terrain determines which paths are possible and which ones are dangerous. Reporting lines are the second major factor because they determine where security sits in the organization and how power flows when priorities compete. A reporting line is simply who reports to whom, but that simple idea shapes budgets, staffing, escalation, and how fast security can get decisions. If security reports into a technology organization, it may have strong access to technical teams, but may struggle when risk decisions conflict with delivery timelines. If security reports into a risk or compliance organization, it may have strong alignment with governance, but may need stronger bridges to engineering teams to turn decisions into action. If security reports directly to an executive level, it may gain authority to coordinate across groups, but it also gains visibility and pressure to show results. These are trade-offs, not automatic wins, and the best structure depends on what the organization is trying to achieve and what problems it has struggled with in the past. For beginners, it helps to see reporting lines as the plumbing for influence and resources, because good intentions do not matter if the program cannot get work prioritized. A security program can also be structured as centralized, decentralized, or a hybrid, and reporting lines often push it toward one of those models. In a centralized model, the security team owns most security decisions and work, which can create consistency and specialized expertise. The risk is that security becomes a bottleneck and feels like an external authority rather than a partner. In a decentralized model, security responsibilities are spread across teams, which can increase speed and ownership because the people closest to systems make decisions. The risk is uneven quality and confusion if guidance is unclear or if teams interpret expectations differently. A hybrid model often aims to keep central expertise while embedding security responsibilities closer to the work, such as having security specialists aligned to product groups while still following shared standards. The key beginner lesson is that structure is not about what looks neat on a chart, but about how decisions and work flow through real teams. If the structure makes it hard to do the right thing, people will do the easier thing instead. Decision rights are the third pillar, and they may be the most important because they eliminate ambiguity about who can decide and who must be consulted. Decision rights answer questions like who sets security standards, who approves exceptions, who can accept risk, who can stop a deployment, and who owns incident decisions under pressure. Without decision rights, security becomes a debate club where everyone has an opinion but nobody has authority, and that leads to delays and inconsistent outcomes. With decision rights, people can move faster because they know what they are responsible for and what they are allowed to decide. Decision rights do not mean security gets to decide everything, because many decisions involve trade-offs that belong to business leadership, such as whether to delay a product launch to fix a vulnerability. Decision rights mean the organization intentionally assigns authority based on accountability, expertise, and impact. For beginners, it helps to see decision rights as the rules of the road, because driving is much safer when everyone knows who has the right of way. A practical way to understand decision rights is to separate decisions into categories that match the kinds of consequences they create. Some decisions are about standards, like what baseline settings endpoints must have or what logging is required, and those decisions should be consistent across the organization. Some decisions are about implementations, like how a team applies a standard within a specific system, and those decisions often belong to the teams doing the work. Some decisions are about exceptions, like allowing a temporary deviation from a standard, and those decisions require careful control because exceptions can become permanent holes. Some decisions are about risk acceptance, meaning the organization knowingly accepts a risk that cannot be eliminated quickly, and those decisions should belong to leaders who own business outcomes. When these categories are not clear, security teams can get stuck either being blamed for risks they do not have authority to fix or being asked to approve decisions that are not truly theirs to make. Good structure assigns decision rights in a way that matches responsibility, so people are accountable for the choices they make. Culture, reporting lines, and decision rights interact in ways that can either reinforce each other or create constant friction. If the culture values speed but security sits in a reporting line that rewards caution and paperwork, security may be seen as out of touch and slow. If the culture values careful review but security sits in a reporting line that rewards delivery above all else, security may struggle to enforce meaningful gates. If decision rights are vague in a culture that avoids conflict, nobody will want to take responsibility for hard calls, and risks will quietly accumulate. If decision rights are too centralized in a culture that values autonomy, teams may resist and work around security instead of collaborating. These interactions are why program structure is not a one-size-fits-all template. The structure needs to match how people actually work, while still pushing the culture in a healthier direction over time. A beginner should see this as designing a system that people can live in, not as forcing people to live in a system that looks ideal on paper. Another important point is that good program structure makes security decisions repeatable rather than emotional. When a new vulnerability is found, you do not want every discussion to start from scratch with panic, disagreement, and guesses. You want a known pathway for who assesses, who prioritizes, who assigns work, and who can approve exceptions, so the response feels routine even when the issue is serious. Structure helps create that pathway by placing responsibilities in the right places and establishing how teams interact. It also helps prevent security from becoming personal, where a decision is influenced by who argues best or who has the strongest personality. For beginners, this is a powerful idea because it reframes security as a managed process rather than a heroic scramble. Repeatability is a form of resilience because it lets the organization respond consistently under stress. When your structure is clear, you reduce the chance that you miss critical steps during a crisis. A security program also needs to account for how different parts of the organization perceive security, because perception affects cooperation. Engineering teams may see security as a set of constraints that need to be designed around, while legal teams may see security as risk exposure that needs to be limited. Operations teams may see security as stability and change control, while leadership may see security as reputation, customer trust, and business continuity. A well-structured program translates security needs into the language each group understands, and that translation often depends on who security reports to and who security partners with day to day. This is where culture shows up again, because some organizations value cross-functional communication and others keep teams in silos. If teams are siloed, the security structure may need formal mechanisms to coordinate decisions, because informal collaboration will not naturally happen. If teams already collaborate well, the security structure can lean more on shared ownership and embedded roles. The point is that program design is about fitting into human systems, not only technical systems. It is also useful to understand that decision rights must include escalation paths, because not every disagreement can be solved at the working level. If a security requirement conflicts with a business deadline, someone needs the authority to decide whether the deadline moves or the risk is accepted. If a team wants an exception that increases exposure, someone needs the authority to approve it with full awareness of the consequences. Escalation is not failure. It is how mature organizations handle trade-offs without paralysis. The best escalation paths are clear, time-bound, and based on roles rather than personalities, so decisions do not depend on who happens to be in the room. For beginners, it helps to imagine escalation like a ladder that prevents arguments from staying stuck on the same rung. Without that ladder, disagreements can drag on until people either give up or make quiet, undocumented choices. With it, the organization can make decisions, document them, and move forward. A final structural consideration is that culture and reporting lines can change, especially during growth, mergers, leadership changes, or shifts in business strategy. A security program that worked when the company had one product team may struggle when there are 10 teams moving independently. A program that was centralized for speed may need to become more distributed as complexity increases, or a decentralized model may need more central standards when inconsistency becomes risky. This is not a sign that the program failed. It is a sign that the organization evolved. Mature program design includes periodic reflection on whether the structure still matches reality, because outdated structures create blind spots and frustration. For brand new learners, it is valuable to see security as a living system that must adapt as the organization adapts. Structure is not set once. It is adjusted as the environment changes, just like technical controls are updated over time. When you build the habit of revisiting structure, you keep the program aligned with both human needs and security goals. When you step back, designing a security program around culture, reporting lines, and decision rights is really about making security doable at scale. Culture tells you how people will respond to security and what kinds of messaging and processes will work best. Reporting lines tell you where security gets authority, resources, and priorities, and they shape how conflicts get resolved. Decision rights tell everyone who can decide, who must be consulted, and who is accountable for outcomes, especially when trade-offs are painful. When these three elements are aligned, security becomes part of how the organization operates instead of an external obstacle. When they are misaligned, security becomes a constant negotiation that drains time and weakens outcomes. For a beginner, the big lesson is that program structure is a real security control because it determines whether good ideas become real protections or stay stuck as documents in meetings. If you can design structure thoughtfully, you make every technical control easier to implement, easier to maintain, and easier to defend when priorities compete.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.